Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Makola Thompson, representing ChildLinK Guyana, and today we have a panel discussion focused on promoting positive social norms for the prevention of child sexual abuse against boys in particular. So this is part of our Blue Umbrella Day campaign, which really aims to promote public education on sexual violence that young boys face as they are a very underserved demographic when it comes to sexual abuse. Today we have with us Ms. Maureen Ho, Ms. Nadia Hollingsworth, and Ms. Vedwati Ram, who are the guests in our panel discussion. And it would be great if we can hear your introduction, ladies. We can start off with you, Ms. Hollingsworth.
All right. I am Nadia Hollingsworth, representing the Ministry of Education. I am the National PTA Coordinator, and it's always a pleasure working with ChildLinK and being on such forum.
Thank you so much
Okay,
for being here.
I'm Mr. Hope, founder of YouTube for Peace and the project of 1,000 program.
Hello, everybody. I am Vedvati Ram. I operate Catalyst Consulting, but my voice in the conversation is that of a parent. That's uh, my focus for this afternoon.
Thank you, ladies. It really is a pleasure to have you all with us here today. I know you all have quite a lot of experience and knowledge in this area, so I'm really looking forward to a very fruitful discussion. So the next question, it's an open one. Whoever has burning comments, feel free to go right ahead on it. So when it comes to social norms surrounding child sexual abuse, these can often take a negative form. What do you believe are some of the negative social norms surrounding child sexual abuse that tends to contribute towards this maintenance?
Still, we'll walk
So we'll
to
be
the bed, do
focusing
your
on
best.
negative social norms. Sorry, was I cutting someone?
Yeah, could you repeat?
No problem at all. So we'll be focusing on negative social norms. Now, a lot of times when it comes to social norms, particularly surrounding child sexual abuse, these can often take a negative form. I'm curious to hear what are some of your thoughts surrounding these negative social norms. There might be ideas such as young boys cannot be victims of violence because, there's the belief that the are the protectors, they're strong. These are negative social norms that really tends to not show the full scope of violence as it exists. So is this within that frame? I'm asking, what are some of the negative social norms surrounding sexual abuse you believe tends to contribute towards the maintenance of child sexual assault?
So I'll quickly jump in. When I was thinking of the conversation earlier today, I checked an article in the Washington Post, February 2021, entitled Sexual Assault Against Boys is a Crisis. And in the article, there's a part that I want to quote from the writer who said, I was shocked to learn that as many as 1 in 6 boys is sexually abused during childhood. About 1 in 4 men is a victim of some kind of sexual abuse, sexual violence over the course of his lifetime, from unwanted contact to coercion to rape. And so she mentioned that it's far more common than we think, and entitled the article, February 2021, Washington Post, Sexual Assault Against Boys is a Crisis. So you're right, Miss. And don't tend to think that sexual abuse is going to be happening. But the, the reality is that uh, it's happening. And the perpetrators are people who are friends and relatives, and sometimes our boys are even groomed to get to a point where they become vulnerable and open themselves to that kind of abuse. So we don't generally think it's a boys issue. We tend to girls and rape, as against boys being raped.
That is certainly very true. And that was one of the key findings from ChildLink's Caring for Boys research. It was found that a lot of persons generally just don't believe that boys can be raped. And so, of course, a lot of focus tends to be surrounding girls, which is very valid as majority of cases reported are of women and girls. But in this focus, we often tend to forget that boys also face sexual violence and that they too need to be protected. Miss Miss Hollingsworth and Miss Hope, any thoughts on negative social norms?
Okay, it is um, sexual abuse can sometimes seen as unfair, especially if being groomed to hit. Sometimes it may it's um ego thing for a young man to be having. Yeah. Oh, yes, it's still a young man, be, especially as a teenager girl, to be having a relationship with the woman they could pick them like a thing, but um, find that working with community is strong and in the strong um, men men it's a ego for them. It's a thing that come a lot of and a lot of trauma because just looked up as this man separate they have it.
Thanks so much for that. We were hearing you a bit broken up, so for those who might not have been able to catch you, when it comes to the ego of masculinity basically and the ways within which that often tends to promote child sexual assault. Young boys are generally raised with this idea that they need to be aggressive and the pursuers of sex. And of course, when you raise them with mentality, it's difficult for them now to go and say, particularly if the abuser is a woman, it's difficult for them to go and say that they were sexually abused, because then there's a feedback that that's something that they should be proud of, when abuse, regardless of who is the perpetrator, is still abuse and needs to be treated that way. So I just wanted to ensure that your points were well heard and highlighted.
I would just want to add a little to that, to say that even in cases where boys are being sexually abused, because of what Ms. Thompson would have alluded to. They're raised to be macho, they must not say, um, they must not, their ego must be at a certain way and all of that. We will find that they really don't want to say anything. I have a number of friends that I would have gone through my career with who were abused as children. And when they relate their stories to us as to when it started and how it started, many of them alluded to the fact that they could not have said anything at the time because the girls in their home were more protected, and many of the abuses started in their homes, extended family members who visited when they would have gone to spend holidays with other close relatives and so on. That is where those abuses started. But of course, the girls were more protected in the home than the boys, and they felt, that some way that they should not have said anything and all of that until adults. Many of them reveal what took place in their adult life, probably with the knowledge and education as to what is happening now that would have, led them to speak out. So just wanted to put that there.
Yes, thanks so much for that point. It definitely is very true that when it comes to child sexual abuse in particular, but generally abuse in general, it tends to be those within the home, those who are closest to you, and whether they're family or friends or people within the community. There's often a perception that abusers are strangers in the dark, but this is not the reality. So, yeah, when it comes to some of the things that are first learned in the home, the norms surrounding abuse, the way in which we respond to that. Ms. Hollingsworth, I want to pitch this question to you. Given your work
Hmm.
with the Parent Teachers Association, what do you think are some behaviors that parents can model or instill in children so that they're not only aware of child sexual abuse?
That's it.
Yes. Yes, what do you think
Hmm.
are some of the behaviors that parents can model or instill in children when it comes to them not only being aware of child sexual abuse, but also the ways within which they can seek support when they witness or experience it?
All right. So some of the things we will ask the parents to do is to listen to their children. Children often have things to say, and we must not shut them up or shut them out. Even though we might come home tired from work, it is always a good thing to listen. And at the time that they might come to you with it, we need to listen at that time and probably um, act on it immediately. We also encourage conversations at the table. We will tell parents to let their children talk, from an early age. We need to have that conversation. We need to have that family day. We need to have to know what is happening in school, what happened in school today, what took place in class. You know, um, Today we have the gadgets replacing family conversations, and that family time that is so crucial. And I would say that we need to ensure that within every family, we have the time to speak. We also model what we would want to see in our children. And so, parents, we know they are the first role models, and we should not um, say things to them that we ourselves are not doing. We would always want parents to instill values, um, positive values, honesty. And so when you know they are coming to you with something, you know that they're speaking the truth. Because one of the things we would have recognized too is that in trying to seek for attention, um, children would normally make up stories and so on. So we don't want those kind of things because they do happen. We teach our children to be honest, and we teach our children certain values that we would want them to emulate. So we know right away if something is wrong and that child comes to us and say, well, mom or dad, this is happening, we know for sure that they're speaking from the point of truth. So as parents, we would normally encourage them to inculcate the best values, encourage the conversation, talk with them, do not shut them out regardless of how tired you are. Find that time. Those are the most
Thanks.
important things that we would ask.
Yes, thanks so much for those points. I think it's definitely important to ensure that you communicate openly with children and create that safe environment wherein they can talk to you about things that they experience. Uh, Just a quick point about reporting in general, particularly when it comes for children. While it is understood that there might be some minor cases wherein the truth might be stretched a bit, these are really in the minority of cases, and so it is generally on the safer side to assume that a person is telling the truth when it comes to allegations of child sexual assault. So, Miss Ram, I would like to also pivot this question to you if you have any thoughts in sharing, and followed by you, Miss Hope.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Miss Miss Thompson, and I agree with Miss Hollingsworth just now. I'm reflecting on a booklet that I produced back in the early 2000s, and I entitled it "Sex Education in the Home." And I was doing a course on parenting and working with parents. So one of the things that I remember talking about is about it's about the kind of a mixed signals we give in our society. We want our children not to be abused, but at the same time, when you listen to some of the music that we hear, I want a man come and ride my rhythm, vitamin sex me up, turn me on, touch me, hold me, whine on me, etc. So when we think of the our culture, and our culture is so sexually charged, right? What I think can happen to our um, is they can become confused, because in one case, mom and dad has me whining up a stereo or something, and somebody is taking their penis and touching another person's butt in this kind of a dance that we tend to do. And at the same time, we are trying to give the message, well, we've got to be careful, our boys are being raped. But it seems as if we have to, as parents, really set boundaries about how we do our parties, about the kind of music and the kind of things that we do in our homes. And I think that's a very difficult thing to do, but that's one thing that I would suggest. I remember working with Interschool Intervarsity Christian Fellowship for 5 years, and another 19 years or so with Child Evangelism Fellowship. And so I worked within the schools, and I remember hearing stories of kids in the washroom and boys peeping the girls, 8 and 9 year olds who are sexually active. Child molestation by peers is on the increase. And I have a story that I have here in the booklet that talks about one child in nursery school was molested by her 4 year old friend, who sought to pull down her undies and put his penis on the spot. So the thing is, I think that the attitudes kids emulating the classroom, in the schoolroom or wherever, are generally based on what are the values espoused in the home. So there is need for parents to really evaluate and check to see, am I really setting boundaries that are safe for my kid? Even like dressing decently at home. We mothers with their boobs half out, or they pull up a slip. And I remember the story of this young man who had a lot of aunties all walking around half naked in the house. So young men would want to sexually experiment. It's a part of their psychological development, physiological development. So the thing is, how do we as parents uh, provide the kind of education at home, like Miss Hollingsworth was talking about, sitting around the table, being yourself available. But I want to be a little bit more active and say you've got to talk about sex education in the home. Start by helping the young child to know where his penis is, and that it's an organ that is very important, and that I tend to use scripture which talks about how we are. Um, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. So, there's a child shouldn't be laughing and degrading himself and, being, um, as we would say in Guyana, touch us about issues. He should know that this part of his body is a very critical, very important. It's God made, and therefore he should be taught how to uh, steward, what he does with his body, where the boundaries lie, what are things you can do, what are things you shouldn't do. So I think I've said a lot there, Akela. So I'll turn back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for raising a lot of important points. The importance of sex education, it really is a big one because there's a certain neglect when it comes to having these conversations with children. Generally, it is believed that children shouldn't know about sex. You shouldn't provide them with this type of information. But then all you're really doing is sending them out into the world unprepared and ill equipped to deal with the realities that exist. And they're often unable to function within relationships because they've never been taught certain things about their bodies, about the other gender's bodies, different things that are very important for children to know. So, sex education definitely is something that, this conservative attitude really needs to be moved away from because it really is harmful when it comes to children. And of course, when they become adults, it just remains. So, ensuring that those conversations continue are very important. I just wanted to briefly touch on a point you made surrounding the increase in child to child molestation. And just to say that one of the things about this to keep in mind is that children often mimic the behaviors around them. So, for instance, if a child is being sexually abused or molested, these are things that they will also seek to mimic. So, if it is observed, if this behavior is observed, it's always good to ask the question, what might be going on in this child's home? How can they be provided support? What can we do to ensure that they understand that this type of behavior is not acceptable? And of course, as you mentioned, it really comes back to a lot of the values that are instilled in children and the experiences that they have. So thanks so much for those points. I think those are really important. I think we might have lost two of our panelists, which is unfortunate. But I actually had another question for you, Miss Ram. I know you said you're here in your capacity as a parent, but I do know you're heavily involved within the religious community. The religious community holds significant sway over a large percentage of the population. And unfortunately, within religious spaces, religious spaces, sexual assault still holds a lot of taboo power, and many will opt to keep it a secret. So, as a faith-based leader, what do you believe others within the religious sector can do to challenge the taboos and holding perpetrators accountable?
Yeah, so I think in the church space, uh, or in the mandir space, in the mosque space, in the religious space, that there is need to be extremely proactive. I know for the Wesleyan Church a couple of years ago, we did a child protection policy manual that we worked on and distributed across the district of Guyana to all the Sunday schools and groups that actually work. So we had exposure to discussions on what would be the child protection policies and how we're going to help people to kind of maintain that focus. So that would be one way that I would say that we need to be proactive in a kind of in that strategic way. But I also think that we need to be proactive in the church space by ensuring that we do programs that help people to be aware of what's creeping in and what's happening in our schools. And ChildLink, I want to applaud you for what you have been doing, because that's where we get a lot of our empirical data, so that we know, facts about what's happening in across the regions. So in the church space, we need to have these programs in our youth get-togethers, in our Sunday schools, in the mosques, in the mandirs. We need to be able to help create the kind of atmosphere where young people can talk about issues that are affecting them. And when you were talking earlier, Akola, I was just thinking about this phrase, or this quote rather, about how it takes a village to raise a child. So there is this need for religious groups to partner and to connect, various Christian organizations working together to be able to help people within their organizations to better understand what's happening. And I think so often I feel as if boys are targeted, especially. And more and more, I've been hearing about what's been happening in schools. And of course, I'm talking with boys myself almost on a regular basis, because I do a club for kids. And in spite of the pandemic, we've been able to connect at various points. So I think, for in my case, what I do is I have a once per month connection time on a topical issue. And we've had discussions, very open discussions with the boys in my club about what's been happening at and what they think, how they steward their bodies, and how their bodies, the phrase from the Bible is that my body is God's temple. So I think that having people who are willing to talk, and people who are not just willing to talk, but people who have the information, and people who could help our young people to make better choices. Because remember earlier when I was talking about the whole idea of mixed signals, of parents behaving one way and expecting their children to be better, and they're involved in stuff. Well, I think that when that happens, the children are looking for somebody else within the community to reach out and to say, hey, Johnny, hey, Sammy, something is wrong. Hey, what's going on? So we need to consistently have connections at the, at the local level in the villages, where people talk freely about these things in meetings, and where kids can learn, how to keep themselves safe from predators, how they need to know uh, who are the people that could do these things. And even those who have been involved in sexual activity, I think there are times when they would feel, well, maybe it's the norm, maybe it's what should happen, Akola and Miss Hollingsworth and Miss Marine. I think there are guys who think it's normal, and they don't understand that they are really endangering themselves. So, a lot to say. Back to you, Miss Thompson.
Yes, certainly. Thanks so much for those points. And it is very true that a lot of young boys, in particular, because we tend to promote these ideas of masculinity and the need for them to always be sexually charged and, constantly pursuing that, a lot of young boys don't even recognize when they are being abused. Young girls too, but the dynamics is a bit different when it comes to boys, because just because of some of the things that are expected of them. And so that's why these conversations are so important, to ensure that this type of knowledge is getting out there, and persons are more better equipped to have these conversations with your children and ensure that it's being accessible to them. So Miss Hollingsworth and Miss Hope, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts to add on the questions surrounding the ways within which churches, mosques, other religious sectors can really strengthen their framework when it comes to supporting survivors and holding perpetrators accountable.
Well, one of the things I would say I know for certain that there are many churches who would have um, topics in their youth groups, and they would normally do extensive work when it comes to child sexual abuse and so on. Because even in my church and other churches I know, we will normally have extensive conversation, and we would encourage our youths to talk about what is happening. We will even identify persons that they can speak with if anything, funny comes up, or if they feel uncomfortable. We would normally tell them where to go, who to speak with, what to say, how to act in that situation. But we also have these popular clubs where boys are into, like, the volleyball, the basketball, the football clubs, and all these places. And we feel that they are safe because, we would normally ask that they be active in sports and they should join clubs and all of that. But even in these spaces, we need to let them beware or be aware of their surrounding, their environment, and that funny touch. Those are some of the things we need to um, teach them in this very so-called masculine environment, because sometimes things happen there as well. So yes, I know that there are churches and religious groups that function in that capacity, even at the level of the schools where they have the religious clubs and societies. Because I was at school where those clubs and societies are very much alive and kicking, and some of these conversations would normally be part of their daily their club discussions. So it is there, but we still have to focus on those who sometimes do not attend any religious organization, or are not in a position to get the message that we are trying to to for them to have.
Thanks so much, Miss Hollinsworth. Miss Hope?
also part of the West. Yeah. So um, we have a strong group where we would with the exclusively to make them aware of sexual abuse um, and what are the norms. And also, I work exclusively in the community. I have a group where currently with about 30 young men. The ages are from like 16 years old. Um, this is one of the things I can exclusively to make them aware their bond, the ton, and things that that they prepare, things that will see no, because many of them talking with them excited 18, 16, they think it's a time when they could get contact to have and these sorts of things. So working exclusively thing that panel is saying there, it is so true. I don't have to create there's things, the same things that I'm to youth within these. Within this also, I'm in schools and I start news with the new and in school, sex is so prevalent. They believe because see, they're ready for sex. They could have sex however they want. It's time. So
Mm.
even they have a big challenge to work with them. Many of them are sexually active. To get them out of that, to get these things, it's not easy. It's not easy. So this is my contribution. This part of the topic.
Thanks so much, Miss Hope. Thanks for that. I had a bit of trouble hearing you, but I'm hoping folks had a bit of better luck when it comes to that. My next question is a bit general and is more focused on the ways within which you promote positive social norms within your home. So I know that you ladies might play roles as caretakers, you might have responsibility over children. How do you promote positive social norms within the environment you exist? It's an open question. Anyone can go.
Well, I think as even as young as Tyler, 1 year, we need to start to teach them about bring them into sex education. So we become aware of their rights and to the different parties, especially their sex organs. So many what we do, we will give a nickname to the penis and to the vagina and these sorts of things, and we call it different. I go for the and want to start teaching from the work. So early as infants, we should start teaching our child sex. Let them know their body and their safety and things so that become aware. In my time growing up, there were so many things we were not aware of. Um, we were in the dark. I remember being a teenager of 13 and being in, they were teaching, we were making department, they was teaching on and sorts of things. They were talking about periods and these sorts of things. I know because I was the teacher asked me, she said, what happened? And I said, I don't know what you were talking about. I have a grandson who's years old, and he can so how it was so different to this time. And I just social media is so much. I think it's a good thing for the young people, but with guides, with supervision, it's good for them with supervision. So I think as infanthood, I need to start to teach our children about what is happening now.
Yeah, certainly, Miss Hope. We definitely agree. Sex education is extremely important. Children need to be equipped with the information to make smart, healthy choices for themselves and their peers. So, thanks so much for that.
Mhm. I was just thinking, Miss Thompson, about the social media influence, the adverts, magazine, but a lot of social media influence, and how how parents need to monitor what their kids are seeing, and they need to not just monitor too, but they need to teach. They need to be able to teach their boys, their girls, but we're focusing on boys today. Need to teach them about even things like sexually transmitted diseases. We know about the HIV, but what about chlamydia, the human papilloma virus, herpes, syphilis, and so on? You know, I have in this I was putting together on in sex education at home. I have a story that I got from a public meeting of one boy who was being paid by his to have sex with dogs. And I think a long time ago, there's a story of this boy who was trying to have sex. So I would ask the question, what sort of who are the influencers on that boy who is sex with dogs or the other one? But who are the influencers? Who's the grandmother? Who's the mother? Who's the pastor? Who's the priest? Who is the movie? Who is there to bring that sense of uh, what do we call it? that it's not even about right and wrong. It's about it's so
Morality.
bizarre. You know what I mean? It's so bizarre when you come
About moral,
about we can't even
morality.
about on and we can't just be saying the nice words, and this is the reality. So therefore we need to teach people how to be accountable. The ChildLinK and other organizations that work with children, Child Evangelism Fellowship, Interschool InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, Campus Crusade for Christ, Youth with a Mission, and all the hundreds of churches and mandirs and mosques that we have across our country. Uh, we need to build a sense of value, when it comes to our sexuality. And also, we need to teach our boys how to cope, how to be able to steward that sexuality. I would take the position, of course, that sex is for marriage. So how do we steward our young people when they are going down in the minibus and somebody might be having sex next to them, and then they become titillated with the idea, maybe I need to try this. So we have such a sex saturated society, so we need to see more of us, more moms, more dads, more institutional leaders, being able to help to steer our boys into making those decisions about their sexuality. Yes, back to you, Miss Thompson.
Thanks so much for that, Miss Ram. Yes, the common theme that seems to be coming up today is the importance of education, educating children on their bodies, on their rights, on the things that they need to know when it comes about sex, not only about the act, but the things that can come with it. So these are conversations that definitely need to be had. Miss Hollingsworth, do you have any comment about that you promote positive social norms in your home?
Things I see very important is to teach about health, um, the importance of being healthy, especially when it comes to your sexual reproductive organs. What are some of the things that can happen if we are exposed at an early age? Miss would have alluded to, I'm not remembering her name right now, but she would have spoken about the sexually transmitted diseases and some of the offsprings or of things of having been exposed at a young age. So what you would normally instill is that, look, there's a time and place for everything. These are the do's, these are the don'ts. If things happen um, outside of what should happen, you let people know, or these are the consequences, these are the health consequences. Um, Miss Hope would have alluded to about the early naming of the body parts correctly, and you also let them know about all the other names that they would call it. So if persons come to you stating, oh, Panani, um, iron, dick, whatever the names are, you let them know so that they can be aware of those things around them. We would normally try as far as possible to not have the conversation, not talk about certain things. Oh, they're my children, they're small, they're little. But some of those children will come and ask, Mommy, what is this? Mommy, I would have heard that, what it is. Because it's so loosely used around that they recognize that that's another word in the vocabulary and they need to know the meaning. And so they will ask. But it is very, very important for them to be aware of their surroundings and to pick up when things are not um, in the ordinary or anything that is out of context. They need to find out, they need to come and ask, and we need to let them know. We need to let them know. And yes, social media is there. Everything that we try to conceal, social media reveals. But we have to be tactful and firm and let them be aware of the negative impact if if they go down that road, or if they choose it, or if somebody it comes to them willingly, without um them being in favor of it. We need to let them know what to look for and how they must deal with it. And yes, the health factors, we know it is, it is a lot. If we are to um talk to them concerning what happens, the do's and don'ts, getting pregnant at an early age, the consequences, and all of that. So we need to let them know, truthfully. We need to be tactful, frank, and not try to conceal information from them. They must know. Those are
Yes,
some of the things we
certainly.
would do.
Miss Thompson.
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I so agree with what Miss Hollingsworth is sharing. And I also wanted to add this part about, the pedophiles, the people who our children need to be aware of. And that the fact that these people could be even people in the home, could be friends, could be even people at church. So how do we help them to know, what might be inappropriate, touches for them, touches on their buttocks, touches on their penis, since we're focusing a lot here on the boys. Our boys should know that this isn't, my uncle or my dad should not be playing with my penis, should not be trying to insert their penis into my buttock, things like that. They need to know those things, and then and we the parents are the ones who would have to tell them and to keep them safe. So that big one about the people who are so near.
Thanks so much for that,
Oh
Miss
yeah. So I was just
And
saying that.
also like that
Sorry,
too,
go
that
ahead.
um, yes,
Okay, you're about to say something.
yes, I would like to have to as the person. So whatever they're looking at, whatever they would be looking at, like they're questionable because they feel that they we would have a time to say to them, at times we would say to them, you're a man to do certain things, and they're just children, but you prepare them from then to be who they are now for the time. So I think as little boy children should really be careful of what we say and what we do to them and do with them. This is my
Yes, I
piece that I
certainly
want.
agree with that. I certainly agree with that. Thanks so much for that point. We tend to look at boys as not requiring the same level of care and protection as girls, and it's not true. You're raising a child. The way you raise a girl child and a boy child, it should not be significantly different from the way you raise them. So it's really important to ensure that we're not promoting harmful ideas about what it is to be a boy or what it is to be a man, and really instill in our boys a sense of purpose, a sense of pride and understanding, ensure that they have information to make the decisions that are healthy and smart for themselves and those around them. So I really want to thank you all for being here with us today. It really was an enlightening discussion, and I'm really happy that we had it. And that brings us to an end to this program, but I'm hoping to connect